elephants.
Oh, is that what it is? Hey, everybody,
Yeah.
my friend Rick Gates is trying to make Cal a Republican school. Just kidding. But how are you doing?
Looks like it.
Yeah, it does. Go Bears. I'll say that because we play this Saturday.
Exactly.
Is election night. You're in D.C. What's it like tonight, even though with the pandemic? Are there parties all around and everything?
No, they're not parties. The city is largely, closed down. A lot of people have left. There are obviously small groups of pockets of people here and there. But, overall, I think a lot of people, because of the pandemic, have, decided to watch the election at home or in small group settings.
Yeah. How is the election from your perspective? This looks a lot different from 2016 in terms of the board. What do you say?
Yeah, honestly, Donald Trump is having a fantastic night so far. The Florida numbers are unprecedented. If they keep up, I think they're going to call it pretty quickly. I think a lot of people are going to try to extrapolate a lot of information from this. I think what it shows is that early voter turnout and also the intensity of Trump's voter turnout today on Election Day is going to matter. Now, I think the interesting thing about Florida is that demographic there with the Latino vote has clearly gone Trump. And then I think we talked a little bit about this. The Democrats are a little worried over the weekend that the Latino vote was not turning out in the Miami area. And I think this is what you're starting to see. But I think, in the next, I'd probably say hour, we'll probably have a call in Florida if the numbers hold. Miami-Dade and Broward County are notorious for kind of holding back the vote to kind of see where everything is and waiting for that panhandle vote to come in, which comes in an hour later than the rest of the state.
Overall, what needs to happen for Biden to win? What needs to happen for Trump to win?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what you have to do is look at, these key states, right? And the problem this cycle is that the courts intervened and kind of, screwed everything up. So you have three key states, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, which everybody knows are kind of three of the most important states in terms of either candidate's path to 270. So unless we have a blowout, it's going to be very hard for these states to make a call unless you have those high numbers. So there's not really a path that either candidate has as of now that will allow them a victory tonight, unless one of those states steps up and makes a call. Like, North Carolina, if you look at the voter turnout, if that voter turnout is high, along with the early voting numbers, and they can account for enough of a vote for one candidate or the other, minus the absentee and mail-in ballots, then they can absolutely call it. But I don't think we're going to have that. I think you're going to see that the races are going to be a little close in those states. So we're going to have to wait a few days.
I remember when I say we, I mean the Obama campaign, Ohio was the big focus. And
Yes.
A lot of people didn't think I didn't think we were going to get it. And I literally fell on the floor when we got it. Where is Ohio in the scheme of things for the Trump campaign?
Yeah, look, Ohio was in a better position than Florida going in. The difference is with Florida now what we're seeing is we're actually seeing the tangible results of that vote. And again, obviously there's not as much of a Latino vote in Ohio. So the question is, where is President Trump going to draw that vote from? Right now, he's doing very well in Ohio. Ohio is one of those states where you kind of get that Democratic vote coming in from the big cities very quickly. And then the outlying suburbs take a little longer to do their reporting. So there's always a discrepancy. I would tell anybody, I know there's going to be a lot of political spin going on tonight, but anybody looking at all this, just be patient. I mean, it is going to take some time for this vote to be counted in a number of states. It is a close election, and so we're just going to have to wait. So, if you hear Republicans or Democrats coming out with early claims, I'd be cautious about that and make sure that a large enough percentage of that vote is in to make sure that either candidate has a substantial lead.
Yeah, this feels very much like 2016 up to a point in terms of areas turning that I didn't think were going to turn, and some areas that were Republican becoming more so and so on. But how would you characterize this race as an entity unto itself? What do you think is the most unique dynamic about it? Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say the most unique dynamic is if you look at the way that President Trump won in 2016, it was through a wide diversity of different demographics of voters across, many states. The one thing that I've seen this time that we did not have in 2016, largely because we didn't have the structure or the resources, is this organic support of Donald Trump. These boat parades, foot parades, car parades, those are not orchestrated by the campaign or the RNC. Those are local communities kind of getting up and saying, I want to support Donald Trump for the economy or for whatever the issue might be. And so it's natural. I mean, there's no way you could have, probably gotten the Trump campaign to convince, a 96-mile line of cars, to parade through, Arizona. I mean, so that organic growth, that organic movement has been absolutely fascinating to watch. And I think that translates, and we'll know better tomorrow, but that translates into voters going out and doing those votes. It's very, very key.
How would you also characterize what's going on in Georgia? Because it looks like Georgia is, well, this is the first 2 years I've been able to be here, consistently. This is the first year I've ever seen it where it's absolutely competitive.
Yeah, look, as of now, it's competitive. But again, Georgia is one of those states where you have a lot of that vote coming in, from Atlanta and other areas that are, large Democratic vote areas. The rural and those suburban areas coming in much later. So Georgia is one to watch. You got to just watch that gap. I know it's funny when people see, 51-49, but 2% of the vote in. It doesn't give you a really good indication of that stage. This is where, at this time in the election, because we have the ability and the technology, when people can start drilling into these districts and these precincts, that's where you get the real data to kind of show what's going to happen. And that's how we're able to dissect Florida right now. And then as the night goes on, we'll be able to do that with other states.
I got a document the other day about how the pandemic has changed business models and enhanced others, particularly with respect to media. But in prepping for our conversation and just thinking about what I've observed the past year and in particular the past few months, it seems to me that there's still something to be said for retail politics, in that idea that as opposed to staying at home or bunkered because you don't want to spread the virus, but it seems like it's a good idea to some degree to get out there and take that risk and put out a lawn sign. But what say you, having been a
there's two great points to that, Zenny. And the first one is CNN put out a kind of an exit poll earlier about issues and what were the core issues. And sure enough, economy was number one, as we expected. I was pretty certain that the virus pandemic was going to be number two. No, number six. The other two were rule of law and kind of racial tensions. So those are your top three issues. And that economic issue is going to exactly what we're talking about. And on the second thing on the COVID, I'm kind of watching because I had a thought earlier in the day that the whole idea of Joe Biden and the Democratic Party kind of focusing on COVID, we'll have to do the numbers and the analysis, but there could be a chance that it actually backfired on them, to your point, and that it was the Democrats that stayed in their houses, whereas the Republicans, who were more than willing to go out to a Trump rally, were the ones that actually went out and voted in person. It's going to be a very interesting thing, I think, to dissect.
Yeah, I thought the Trump campaign was taking a risk by doing that. But then, and I think it's because of you're dealing with death, right? And then, I was thinking about ways I thought if I ran a campaign or if I ran for office, how would I have squared that circle? And I would have figured out a way to go out and make people safe. But the bottom line is you want to meet them face to face, and lock their eyes. That still matters today. What say you?
Yeah, no, look, a lot of the seniors, they wanted to go out and vote in person because that's their traditional way of doing it. They're not into, ballots, paper, computers, that's a generational thing, obviously.
Right.
But with that said, seniors did request, the lion's share of the, mail-in ballots. But the trick with that, and again, we're going to see what the numbers are in 2016, only 80% of the absentee mail-in ballots were actually submitted and accepted. And actually another 3% were rejected once they were submitted. So we're really going to have to watch that number, and I think that will be interesting to see whether, on a party basis, did more Democratic voters vote by mail, seniors that is, vote by mail, or did they go in person versus the Republican seniors? What do they do? Do they go in person or vote by mail? And I think you're going to see a very clear contrast to those two camps.
What do you think that this spells for the future? There was an idea that Texas is now purple. And what say you about that idea? I heard that idea expressed by Michael Steele on MSNBC a few minutes ago. What are your thoughts about that?
Look, I don't see it happening now, and I think a large part of that, again, is similar to Florida, where you have that Latino vote that's going to be very impactful. But it's kind of like Georgia too. I mean, Georgia, I call it the head fake of 2016 and 2020 because the Democrats have done a good job of making that sound like it's a battleground state. In 2016, Donald Trump won it by over 5 points. We'll see what he does tonight, but I don't think it's a battleground state or a toss-up state. I think Donald Trump is going to win it. Now, we'll have to see what the percentage is. To your earlier point, I am curious to see if it's become more competitive. But the same thing holds true for Texas. Texas is it's so big. And remember, we went through this in 2016, right? Hillary Clinton may have had a shot at Texas. And then for her, it kind of waned, in the latter part of the campaign. Joe Biden, obviously a much different candidate than Hillary Clinton. So ideally, you would think, okay, maybe this guy has a better shot at it. We'll see tonight. But the numbers, I mean, the internal numbers that we had, Texas, we were up 4 or 5 points. And I suspect, based on what I've seen on the exit polls so far, that's probably going to hold. But again, to your point, looking at the future, we're really going to have to get in, and really where the fun analysis is going to be is seeing how these demographics break out. Everybody's tracking the black vote right now, right? I mean, on a national basis, it showed kind of a 90-10 split, which even that, while I think it's going to be higher in the end before the night's over, 10% is higher than Donald Trump did in 2016, where he had 8%. So again, between the Latinos and the blacks, I think that's going to be one of the big headlines tomorrow, that some of these states are going to be highly impacted by those two demographics, and we'll have to see who's going to win. But right now, it's looking pretty good for Donald Trump.
Hey, what do you think about, some people say Latinos. When I think of Latino, I go back to a study that I wrote for San Francisco when Ed Lee, who later became mayor, was the head of the Human Rights Commission. It's called African Americans in San Francisco from 1960 and 1990. And what struck me was that, and I think when I say this, you'll agree, demographically and statistically, there's not one set of Latinos. There's Latino white, Latino black, Latino Asian, and then Latino. So when we say that, what does it really look like to be Latino today? Because you mentioned, for example, Cuban. Isn't it more complicated than we're led on?
Absolutely, and that's something. It's a great point to raise because I learned about it in the 2016 campaign. There's actually a clear distinction between Latinos and Hispanics, and if you ask anybody in those communities, they will lay it out for you in very strong detail. And that was something very important for Donald Trump and our campaign to pick up in 2016, because when you're going down to specific districts, Miami, versus Orlando, versus the places in Texas, completely different across the board. And you have to be prepared for that, because there are different messages that resonate with those two groups of what most people would consider Latinos in general. But there are specific divisions within that demographic that I think, to your point just a minute ago, over time and in the future, that is going to be, a couple of different breakout groups. And it's going to be interesting to see how those develop.
Now, in the interest of time, too, because I know this is a short one, how do you think California is going to play out on the West Coast? We haven't gotten there yet.
It's funny. I spoke to a reporter earlier about California. I said, unfortunately, if we had the referendum out in California, Republicans might have laid claim to the southern part, as winning part of that state. But, what I find fascinating about California, and what I'm very excited to see, is obviously, not the total votes, because it's probably going to go Biden. I mean, not probably, it will go Biden. But the thing for me to look at is the voter intensity for Trump. How many more Republicans came out in California knowing that they probably weren't going to turn California, but still wanted to come out and support Donald Trump? I'm curious to see that number. So, did more Republicans come out, like in other states, or, was it kind of the same, it's California, we're not going to vote. But I got to believe that, just given the intensity and the enthusiasm of voters on both sides, Democrats and Republicans, that there is going to be higher voter turnout almost in every state.
And is it more like Barack had a cult of personality, but the president himself has a cult of personality, but it doesn't seem like either one really translates into down votes. How does one square that? Or is that something that, given where our society is going, is a hard question to answer?
Well, look, I think overall, time is going to tell, and with this president in particular, I mean, let's be honest, he's a unique president. I mean, nobody thought he was going to get elected in 2016. He is a non-politician that's completely brought another subset of issues to the table. So I think over time, I mean, for me, the question is, if and hopefully it looks like he's headed that way, but if he wins tonight, what is that going to do to the future generations of people that look to run for president, right? Because everybody's under the opinion and belief that you have to be a 30-year politician to be even considered for president. And there are clearly unbelievably talented people in our country that may have something to contribute and think they can do it by being the elected leader of this country. And so I'm curious to see if people are watching Donald Trump, not necessarily for what policy positions he stands for, but just the idea of a person like this being able to do it. And I guarantee you, if he wins tonight, that's going to give people a lot of confidence in that model moving forward.
Now, if he doesn't win the night, I'll make an honorary Democrat and an honorary Cal alum. How's that? You got blue and gold on. Got to reward you.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not USC, not UCLA, but I mean, I'm happy to play the California role if we need to. I think it's going to be fun watching California tonight, just to kind of see from a statistical and data point of view what happens. I think there's going to be some interesting data in California.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of hair losing, but I don't have any more to lose, so I'm cool there. It's gonna be a lot of fun. Hey, Rick, stick around in the backstage. We'll have you back again, and have fun tonight.
Fantastic. You too. Enjoy the election.
You got it. Okay. Stick around in the background. How's that for you?
Dude, that's a great hit. I mean, look, if you got time, maybe we can do another